All right, everyone, a few hundred Google employees have formed a union. They're worried about working conditions. I'm thinking to myself, you're kind of in the place to be. I'm assuming making high five-figure salaries at a minimum as a low-level code monkey in a company like Google, and you're worried about working conditions. Here's the problem. This union will inevitably lead to, probably bigger blocks of the company becoming unionized. And what you're going to end up seeing is wokeness. And so I would be shorting Google right now because of this fact. The fact is that the problems with Silicon Valley have nothing to do with working conditions or how the workers in these companies are treated. They're treated fine. They get lots of money. They have big, cushy office campuses. You look at Google, Facebook, whatever the fuck it happens to be. The conditions are fine for them. Really, the problem with Silicon Valley is that they've stopped doing what they've been doing for, in some cases, several decades, which is be platforms of neutral information, and they've started to editorialize, throwing around multinational, multi-billionaire power behind a corrupt political establishment. We see this, for example, with YouTube. We see this with regards to Twitter. With regards to certain political topics, with anything that happens to be edgy, even to the point of historical footage. Some speech made in the 1930s by someone that they want to erase from history is scrubbed off the platform, even if it's historically necessary. The people should have access to that. You've got a great deal of material that's been essentially sanitized off of the internet at large. And Google, Ted Cruz, when he comes out and says Google's the most dangerous company, is technically right because of the disproportionate carrying of information Google does. Because it's not just like Google it's not just like Gmail, which is, to my mind, I believe the biggest email provider in the world. It's not just their almost monopolistic search engine, which explicitly forms a vertical monopoly and explicitly is engaged in trust-style behavior towards competitors. For instance, try searching for something on Google that would appear on BitChute. You're not going to find it very easily. BitChute's a direct competitor of one of Google's main subsidiary components. That's an illegal vertical monopoly. Google operates, as I said, the biggest video hosting network. Blogspot is still a big thing, although I think WordPress is used by more people. I use both myself. At least that's still functional. Both of them, by the way, updating their look and their feel a few months ago and making themselves less usable, but we'll get past that for now. With the employees forming this union, I have to chuckle because it has to do with working conditions instead of Google's mission statement, its initial mission statement, don't be evil, being basically thrown in the dustbin of history in favor of, be evil a little bit as long as you get paid. That's the problem with Google, and it affects a lot more people. Now, a few hundred Google employees versus how many people use some major Google service or another. There are two basic app stores, Apple and Google. They're the only ones. They tend to simultaneously agree, and it's, by the way, it's totally coincidental when this happens. They tend to simultaneously agree whenever an app is inappropriate. It's linking to bad info. We're going to purge it. Oh, says Apple, yeah, we'll purge it too, but we totally didn't coordinate and get a phone call from Google. The same third party didn't complain to both of us at the same time now. That's a conspiracy theory. I have now considerably lower confidence in Google existing, at least in a considerable form, in another decade. Like by the end of the 20s. And don't think that it can't go the way of Sears. Sears was once very, very hegemonic. It was extremely popular. The Sears catalog was the place to be for buying certain products. 50, 60 years ago, Sears Roebuck, it was the big thing. Walmart's still there, but Sears is gone. They were both enormous corporations. They both had, at least initially, very good sources of income, very good similar ideas, and a huge scope. You look at the Sears Tower, which I think was renamed a while ago. One of the biggest buildings in the world at the time. They didn't build that just because, we're kind of doing well. No, they built that as basically a giant dick in the Chicago skyline to say, fuck you, we're the best. That's what they did. But they don't exist anymore. Despite, various attempts to reinvigorate their brand. And didn't they buy Kmart at one point? Or was it Kmart bought them? I can't remember who bought who. It was sort of like Ames when they went under. Ames was better than Sears, by the way. Most of you probably are too young to remember what Ames is. I don't even know if it was beyond a regional brand, to tell the truth. But Walmart's still there. Yeah, of course. Which way will Google go? Well, if they start having union problems, probably the way of Sears. Don't think that they can't MySpace out. Everyone always assumes that each individual paradigm, each decade or so, The big boys, they're too big to fail, they're here to stay. The only way that they become too big to fail is if the government tries to quasi-nationalize them, which would be the worst thing ever. I happen to agree with Vahi and many others. You can't legislate your way out of the problem that we're seeing with the tech giants. You have to deregulate more. The only thing regulatory in nature that would work is a reform of 230 to add a couple of sentences to it. Section 230 will only apply to platforms that act as platforms. If they begin to editorialize outside the scope of U.S. law, while being based in the U.S., they lose Section 230 protections and may be litigated against at will. That's all you need to add. 2 sentences. That would solve the entire goddamn fucking problem. By the way, when employees unionize, what's the first thing they want? They want money. But by the way, it's possible for people who are not massively rich to be fucking greedy. Yes, it is possible for someone who just makes bad fiscal decisions and lives beyond their means to say, hey, you know what? I fucked up, but I want government to take care of me. Rob somebody else with more than me and give me some crumbs. But each time the government does that, incrementally more each fucking year, no matter who, by the way, is in charge, now what ends up happening is the government needs more bureaucrats. And they siphon a proportion of that welfare crumbs. So if you take $1 from a rich man and give it to a poor man, the poor man doesn't get $1, they get maybe 10 cents. The rest of it goes into bureaucrat pockets. Well, unions will fuck up the system real good. I feel sorry for the people that run Google, and you could have, by the way, you could easily have built a brand that was conceivably far, far more positively received by far more people, that would enjoy sort of like back in the early 2010s, there was an enormous sort of in-group loyalty to these Silicon Valley brands. A YouTuber was a YouTuber. They were proud to be a YouTuber. Most of them aren't YouTubers anymore. They're just creators. They make videos. Google and its component parts lost their brand loyalty. It's a big problem. The most powerful thing you have, whether you're a creator, by the way, or a corporation, is your brand. If people perceive you positively, you can get away with a lot more. You have a lot more leverage and malleability. It's a lot harder for someone else to supplant you. You already have alt-tech sites gobbling up more and more market share. I know as an absolute number, YouTube is still hegemonic, and Google's services are still hegemonic. People are gaining on them, though. Proton Mail is rapidly growing. I think there's those Fast Mail and a few others as well. Google Search is openly maligned at this point for its constant censorship. Look up American inventors or American scientists on Google Images sometime, and then compare it to what you see even on Bing, which is it's run by Microsoft. It's not all tech or anything like that. Now try it on Yandex. Now try it on Startpage or one of the Ecosia. Google Chrome. When Firefox began to shit the bed, which by now is a complete process, they teamed up with George Soros by the Open Society Foundation explicitly to fight misinformation by retooling our browsers extensions. So I started using Opera. By the way, I know Brave is pretty good and a few others, Pale Moon. When they started shitting the bed, a lot of people started using Google. Well, now people are getting away from Chrome, I believe, in general. They're using alternatives. Gmail, again, everything under the sun. Blogspot. 10 years ago, Blogspot was king. WordPress has, I believe, eked out a considerable lead over them. There's a reason for that, and it's not just design. If you look at them, by the way, right now, they look identical. And I hate the new look. I liked the old one. It was more functional on both of these sites. I really don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're retooling it for the dumbed-down smartphone generation. Who fucking maintains their WordPress page on a smartphone, dude? I don't understand it. It makes no sense. Now, wokeness will ensue. You're going to see more pink-haired people in more positions of power, and they'll demand more diversity and another lounge and more HR people, more comfy offices and more money, and they'll demand more censorship, and they'll rip Google a fucking apart. Google's already dealing with antitrust lawsuits as we speak. By the way, I don't want Google to implode. As a person who uses YouTube as their main platform and also uses Blogspot, although I will be transferring out of Gmail because fuck it at this point, as a person who uses these services, imploding Google makes so much less sense than simply reining them in. It would be easy. If only Congress weren't owned by China, we would have already done that. But of course, that would be common sense. It'd take them one legislative day. They could do it in 2 hours. It would be a 1-page bill, simply reaffirming and then slightly reforming 230 to be conditional and providing for basic litigation. That's all you need. You don't even need lawyers there. These people are smart enough, they could figure it out. And you're never going to see it happen, I think. It's very unfortunate. Ted Cruz is like, well, they're dangerous. We need antitrust. No, you don't. You don't need to get rid of 230. You don't need antitrust suits. Fuck the antitrust. Let them be a fucking monopoly, as long as they're acting as a neutral platform. Case in point, Vermont. Comcast operates a cable monopoly in the state of Vermont. But in order to have that monopoly and make that money, they have to conform to certain basic principles. They are a neutral carrier. They cannot throttle Vermonters. They cannot censor people. There are pricing limits, I think, which I disagree with a little bit more because it forces them almost to operate at a loss, which is why the service is so fucking shitty in Vermont speed-wise. But there are auspices that, ISPs and oil companies and roads and stuff, you can't simply ban somebody for their political beliefs. We should be treating these people the same way. And then unionization is a bad thing. Unions are on their way out for a reason. They're a relic of last century. That's about all. Peace out.